Hello, welcome back to the Oracle SQL tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to discuss about constraint and why you need a constraint and then how to use a constraint and all this thing. Okay, so let's find out why we need a constraint. So constraint is basically some sort of rules that basically prevents prevent invalid data entry. Okay, so let's see some example. We have a table, let's say ABC, and in this ABC table we have two columns. One is column A and column B. Both of them are numbers, so these are two columns. Okay, let's say my rule is that I no duplicate entry per column A. That means what I'm saying here is that if the rule is that I should not see any duplicate entry here in column A. Okay, so let's say the first then I'm trying to insert a data, so let's say insert 10 and 20. Okay, so 10 and 20 is fine because there's no data, so first time is we are entering 10. So let's say next time we enter 15 and 20. This is fine again because the rule is no duplicate entry, so 15 is not duplicate. Okay, so third time let's say we want to insert a row which is 10 and 25. So when I want to insert 10, the problem here is that the rule says that there's not been a duplicate entry for column A, but we have already one 10 is available. So the moment you want to insert this thing, this rule is broken. So therefore this will not be allowed by Oracle database. Okay, so basically what constraints are, it is a way, it's a mechanism by which you can prevent invalid entry of data, and also you can prevent invalid delete of the data. We'll see them while we're going to discuss more about constraint. Okay, so there are different types of rule. There are 5 types of rule. First one is called not null. Second one is unique key. The third one is primary key. Fourth one is reference key, or some people say it foreign key, reference or foreign. The last one is check. Okay, so essentially these are the 5 types of constraints that we're going to deal with. So in our next set of slides we are going to discuss in detail about each of them, and we'll give you a syntax how to create them and how to use them. And my recommendation is that don't worry much about the syntax, because you can always see the reference guide to get that syntax, but understand what is the rationale behind that, why we are doing that, when we are going to use them. So if you understand them, then there are a lot of graphical user interface tools are available. By just a mouse click you can able to know those things. You don't really focus on much on the syntax here, but I'll just give the syntax in case. Okay, well, the first one is not null constraint. So basically not null constraint, the rule ensures that null values are not permitted. That means let's say I have a table called ABC, and in this table ABC I have a column A. So if I say that this is a not null, if the rule is not null, then you cannot simply insert into ABC values null. So this statement is going to fail because it's not obeying the rule of not null. So you can create this constraint in 2 ways. First, while you are creating the table, like while creating the table you can say that this is the rule, or if you after you have created the table and you realize that you need some kind of rules, then you can alter the table and add this constraint. Okay, so essentially the syntax will be always the two syntaxes. Okay, the first one is while table creation time, second one is after table creation by using an alter command. Okay, so let's take a look at this commands. So The first command says about create table ABC, and then A is a number, so A is the column name, number, and I just keep not null. So this is just going to work. Okay. Then if you forgot, if you create this table without a constraint, that means you just create table ABC, A number. Okay. Afterwards, you can go and modify this table to add a not null constraint, and it's just like this: alter table ABC, modify, and A is not null, the column name not null. Okay. The second type of constraint is unique key. Okay, so in case of unique key, we ensures that there is no duplicate values. All right, so if I have this same table ABC and I have a column A and B, right? So if I say that A is a unique key, that means you cannot have a duplication of values in this table. We should not find any duplication of data in this table for column A. However, you can insert a null, because so you can insert a null. So that means unique key contains no duplication, but it might contain a null value. And here is some quick syntax just to see how to do that. Again, we can do at the table creation time by saying that create table ABC a number, and then you give the constraint and give the name of the constraint, and then again this name of the constraint here I give X, which is very bad, right? It just doesn't say what kind of constraint it is. Rather, I'll recommend you to give a name, something like which you can understand. Say for example, check underscore unique underscore A. So that means that, okay, so this is a check constraint, sorry, this is a constraint with unique constraint, and then on the column A. So the more user friendly names you are going to give, the better it is, because later on when data insertion fails, you can basically figure out by looking at the constraint name what is going on. Alright, and then you can also create a constraint, unique constraint, after you created the table. And if you have not created the table with a constraint, but no worry, you can create after the creation of table by giving an alter statement. Okay, so alter statement table name is add. So this is what is add constraint. Then again, this is a constraint name here, something else. Again, you can give it to a user friendly name, unique A. Alright, so this is how you can do a unique constraint. The next one is primary key. So basically, primary key essentially ensures that there is no duplicate and no null values. So here is a difference between primary key and unique key. Unique key might allow a null value, but primary key would never allow you a null value. Okay, and also it will ensure there's no duplicate. So essentially what primary key does, primary key uniquely identify a row. So if you have a null value, then you cannot identify that row. So that is the reason why not null is no null value is allowed. Okay, so that means if you do something like this, if you have a ABC and then you have this column A, you first create a not null constraint, then you create a unique key constraint that is equivalent to creating a primary key constraint. Okay, so instead of doing two constraints, what you can do, you can just create a primary key constraint. Okay, so let's say in our department table, okay, in our department table we have department number 10, 20, 30 and 40, and we are saying that department number is my primary key. Okay, so if department number is primary key, then if that is a role that that constraint that you did, then the moment I want to insert a new row which is 20, marketing, and of department of marketing, and then location is Dallas, then it's going to fail. The reason is already we have a 20 department which is a research in Dallas is already available. That means this insertion is going to fail. So if you take a look, basically what I'm doing here is that by giving this, by defining this constraint, I'm basically preventing ugly things to happen. Okay, so that is a very powerful features of the RDBMS. Okay, so if you make your table, you have proper rules and all this thing, then there is very less chances of data corruption, or the very less chances of invalid data being get entered in the first place. Okay, so this is what is a syntax, and it's a create table name, and then you can give in the last that constraint. This is basically syntax, and then so here is a good example of how to give a good name for the constraint. So it says that table name is department and column name is department number, pk is the primary key, and then this is the keyword primary key, and then the column on which this key is existing, so that is what department number. Alright, so this is for the primary key. So far we have described already three types of constraint: not null, unique, and primary key. So next one, let's discuss about reference key or foreign key. Some people also this is also popularly known as foreign key. So for foreign key, let's try to explain on the with examples of two tables. The first one is department table. In department table, department number is my primary key. Alright, so department number is my primary key. That means department number cannot be duplicated, and also it cannot be null. Okay, now I have another table called EMP. Okay, so in EMP, what I say, whenever I created this table EMP, so the first thing that I created this department table. Okay, I created a department table with a primary key on DPT number. Okay, so next time whenever I created this employee table, and then for me this employee table also I will have a department number, but that is a reference key or foreign key. To basically what I'm saying is that whenever I'm creating this employee table, I will create a department number, but I'll point that department number to the department number of departments table. Okay, so that means we have department number in our employee table. Okay, so this is basically points to department number of department tables. Okay, that means if I have, so basically what you can say is that this is parent. Okay, so this is parent and this is child. That means if I have a department already existing in departments table, then only I can insert a employee on that department. You also can think about something else, like think about a physical world. Like now, if we can have an employee only when we have a department. Alright, so is a employee cannot be there, employee cannot exist without a department. So that is a concept. Okay, so let's say if we do that, and what we are doing here is we are not allowing an employee with an invalid department number. And how do I know it's invalid? Go on and check in the department tables if that department is already existing or not. So let's take an example, so that will basically clarify the thing. Let's say I want to insert, after I put this rule, foreign key, primary key, and all this thing, then I'm trying to insert a new employee. Okay, a new employee, his name is Ford, and he is a manager, and his department number is 9. Okay, so I want to try to insert. So now tell me if it's going to be inserted. So if I'm going to insert a department number 9, first I will try to see if there is a department number 9 existing in departments table. In this case the answer is no. Since department number 9 is not existing in department table, therefore this insertion is going to fail. Okay, next I'm going to insert 7571 Ford, another employee named Ford, manager, and his department number is null. We don't know. So if I want to insert this one, this is again is going to fail, because null is not available here in the department table. That we do not know. That means that is what it says, that is what ensures, this rule, foreign key rule, ensures a relationship with another table. and there are two tables. Just think about who is the parent, who is the child. Parent will have the primary key, child will have the foreign key or reference key. Alright, and then here is the syntax, how to write those things. Again, as I told you, don't worry about the syntax. Syntax is not that important, but just for the sake of completion, I'm just giving it. So what I say is, first the rule is that I need to first create the department table, okay, with department number as primary key, and then I'm going to create this employee table, and then here is a constraint or the rule that I'm describing, and then I'm giving the constraint name, and I say foreign key the keyword, and which is the key here. Here in this case department number is the key. Then I says it references to whom, to the department table. Okay, so this is what it says. It's very, like, so this is what I'm saying. This is how I ensure that relationship, by making this thing that references department number of department. Okay, so this is what is called primary key, foreign key, and then the constraint is called foreign key constraint. Okay, so the next one. Okay, so let's say, so far we have all done up to insert and all this thing. Alright, so let's say I have the situation. I have a department tables, I have an employee table, and there is a employee called King in department number 10. Okay, so my question is, if I want to delete from departments where department number is equal to 10, so what do you think? Do you think is going to be deleted? Well, just apply some common sense. Let's say, assume that I am able to delete this thing. Okay, so this is no more there in the department table, but that means you do not have a department in New York, but looks like there is an employee, his name is King, who is working on the department. Okay, this is not consistent. This is not consistent, and this needs to be prevented. Well, that is because of this primary key foreign key rule. The moment you want to give this delete, is going to fail. It's not going to work, because it will say that it will complain that there is a child key, or there is a child existing in the employee table for the department number 10. Therefore, you cannot. However, whenever you created this foreign key constraint, if you give a clause called on delete cascade, okay, so if you give on delete cascade, then what is going to do is going to, if you, and then if you created using on delete cascade, so something like this, the syntax is okay, something like this. So basically, if you see in the last this is the normal way of creating the foreign key, and using on delete, what I do is I just add this clause on delete cascade. So when I do that on delete cascade, what is going to happen is that whenever I'm going to delete, so it is going to delete this row, and also is going to delete all the employees whose departments are 10. Okay, that means, so that is the reason the cascade. Cascade means is first delete the child keys, like so if I want to, if my command is to delete department number 10, then it will figure out what are my employees that is working in department number 10. So first it's going to remove those rows. So once those employees are removed, then it is going to delete the department number 10. All these things going to happen automatically by Oracle. You don't have to worry if you give this clause on delete cascade. Okay, fine. So now, if you go to the first, so we discussed not null, discussed unique, discussed primary key, discussed foreign key. Now let's discuss about check constraint. Okay, so essentially check constraint is something, what it does is it will allow you to check a value. Usually it will allow you see, like, if this value is following the rule or not. Okay, so let's say, like, I have this row, I have this table ABC, and I have this column A, and if I say that whenever you want to insert some values to A, check if that value is in between two numbers. Okay, so that means if I give this condition, okay, so let's basically take a look at the check constraint command. So let's just say this is a check constraint command. Okay, so if I do create table ABC, then I give a number constraint. So I say that A is between 10 and 15. Okay, that means if I want to insert into this ABC table some value 11, it's okay, because 11 is in between 10 and 15. But if I want to insert a row called 110, because since A is not between 10 and 15, then this 110 will not be going to work. So that is what is called check constraint. And then you can create a check constraint on any column, and then you can, basically this is a condition, the 10 to 15. Also you can use a function here, you can use a lot of other things. Okay, so that is what is check constraint. So basically check constraint will give me, if I want to allow a specific value and I want to prevent of allowing some other values. So that is what check constraint enables me to do that. Okay, so this is a check constraint, right? So with this I think we covered all the different types of constraints. So now let's basically take some example, like, if I want to do, like, say for example, I'm already working on a database which the tables I have not created, but somebody else has created those table. Alright, so this ABC table or EMP table or whatever the tables are, somebody else has created. So how do I know what are the constraints that already existing there? Okay, so there is a table called user underscore constraint. So if you query this metadata table user underscore constraint for the table name, you should be able to see what kind of different types of constraints are on that table. So here is a command to do that. Say for example, I want my table name is ABC, so therefore I just select constraint name, what kind of constraint type, like now we already discussed 5 types of constraint, and status, we'll just discuss about what is a status, and then from this table where table name is ABC. So that means it will show me what are different types of constraint are already existing. Okay, so let's say, like, the logic is that, the reason that why you want to know the constraint, because say for example ABC table has some constraint on A. What I want to do is that I want to do some insert into those table, right? Let's say if I want to insert some table to A, so let's say A has a check constraint, and that checks that the values can only exist between 10 to 100. Okay, so the moment, if I want to insert 10, what's going to happen? First thing is that before insertion it will check if the constraint, if the rule is obeyed or not. If the rule is obeyed, then 10 will be inserted. So every time, every insert statement I am going to insert, I am going to check the rule. Well, sometimes if I know for sure that, if I am doing a bulk loading of, let's say, 1 billion rows, so it's not a good idea to check each time the constraint. If I can assure that whatever data I am trying to insert, they are correct through other programming, then what I can do for that temporary period of time, I can disable the constraint. Okay, why I am disabling the constraint? Because I know for sure that the data is good. Then to make this loading faster, if I disable them, then it will not check all this logics, all the logic of going through and then check constraint, all these things will not be obeyed. So that is a reason why we disable the constraint after we have created a constraint. And after this loading happens, we can make it enable, so that next time somebody wants to do, this check will happen. So the rule is this: if you know the data are good, if you trust your data, then disable your constraint and load it, and after that you enable it. Okay, so then, and the last one is that if there is no other chance and you want just forever you want to get rid of the constraint, that some rule changed and something, you don't need to you don't need to have this a from 10 to 100. A can be anything. Then what you can do, you can drop the constraint. Okay, you can drop the constraint, and then this is a command for them, like alter table drop constraint and constraint name. Okay, so here is this thing. I didn't give you a lot of commands here. Okay, the reason is these things are not really important. Okay, so what is important is that, like, there is a graphical user interface tool available for you to do those things. So let's try to take a look. So this is what our OSOft Oracle Lab Access. So you go there and then give the password demo 123. Sorry, I think sorry. So I give the password and I go to my SQL workshop. I go to object browser, and then I just want to see what are my tables. So it looks like my employee table. Okay, so if you see here, there's something called constraint. So click on that. So you can see all the constraints on this employee table. Well, you can also, instead of going to this tool from your SQL Plus, you can also get this thing by querying the table called user underscore constraint. Alright, but instead of that, you can also go use this graphical user interface tool called SQL workshop. Okay, and it will internally do the same thing, query from the user underscore constraint and give you this thing. You can create another new constraint, you can drop an existing constraint, you can enable, disable, all the things that you can do with the constraint is available in this row. Right, so therefore, basically what I will suggest you is to understand the concept and don't worry about the syntax, because you can just create a this is a syntax that you are going to write. You don't need to do anything. You just give you just understand what is the constraint type. You understand what is the why these things are there, and if you understand, then it will create you a SQL to execute, and which will create a new constraint. Thank you very much. In our next slides we are going to discuss about database objects.